Greetings. This here study program and research is going to be titled Chief Tuscaloosa Slaves and Black Indians of the region of Alabama. I'm reading out of the book, I think it's Invasion of the Territory by DeSoto. Now, it's a good book. See if you can find the download or whatever the case. See if you can find a PDF or physical copy. It's available. And this book is a short book, but I'm going to focus on some central characters and some central themes that I feel like should stick out and help you in your research. All right. Now that's what we're going to get into. Okay. So what I'm going to say is this. I have a theory. And the theory is this. The Spanish started enslavement as soon as they arrived. Now, why does this matter? Because this is in direct opposition to what you've been taught in school, to what you've been told. Why does it matter? Because this is the land of your inheritance. You need to stop the confusion, get into these other books, into this research, and stop the flim-flam. Things is getting serious. This is on the day right after the Independence Day of the United States. The soul contract is up. Their contract is up. Things of this nature is important to remember. Okay? So we got central figures. I'm not going to read the whole book. I'm going to chop through. And we're going to find points of interest. And I'm going to point out some things here and there. Like again, I said, the name of this book is The Invasion of the Territory. And I think it's by DeSoto. Hernandez DeSoto. Okay. So, let's do it just like this. We're going to go start on the first page, which is not the first page of the book, but it's the first page where I want to pick up the trail. Okay. The next day, the town of Utania was reached where DeSoto encamped 6 days, awaiting the abatement of the stream which ran by it, now violently swollen by incessant rains, as the expedition had not crossed any stream since leaving Coosa. It is probable the one alluded to was the modern Tascalahacha. The march was continued to Yolebahale, situated upon Hatchet Creek, which was called a small river. The town was surrounded by a wall composed of two rows of posts driven deep in the ground. The poles lay horizontally between them, the inner and outside of the framework, neatly stuccoed with clay and straw. Portholes were left at proper distances, forming a defense as high as a lance. Such was the character of the Indian fortifications from this place onward. Now, you got to get out this TP stuff, man. You have to get out of this TP Indian savagery that they tell you about. You have to get away from that. These places, what these people were seeing, were structured places. They had fortifications, they had forts, they had technology. Now this is just part one, but we're going to see that in another part of this. But let's just get into this. Let's keep going in this. In consequence of the duress of Xhosa, whom De Soto carried along with him, but treated with respect and kindness, the Indians of Ulabahale were in arms. Before the Spaniards entered the suburbs, 12 principal men armed with bows, with lofty plumes upon their heads, advanced and volunteered to rescue their beloved chief, arraying a formidable force. But he dissuaded them from it. On the opposite side of the creek lived a sub-chief who furnished De Soto with thirsty women for slaves. Okay? To carry the birthings. Then the Adelantado pursued his wanderings, leaving behind Mosenio, a native of Salamania of noble percentage, who was lost while rambling in the hills for grapes, which were in great abundance. The route lay along the modern Socapatoy region in the county of Xhosa. The expedition passed the town of Tanse and several others subject to the chief of Talisi, and arrived at the great town of that name on the 18th September 1540. Talisi was an extensive town, the principal part which was encompassed by a wall similar to that just described, with the addition of terraces. It reposed upon a point of land almost surrounded by a main river, which was the Tallapoosa. Extensive fields of corn reached down. Okay, so now you see, man, you have a lot of moving parts here. It says, I want to go to something real quick. Where was it at? De Soto with 30 women for slaves to carry birthings, and I'm sure that's some type of supplies or something. On the opposite side of the creek lived a sub-chief who furnished De Soto with 30 women for slaves. So you see, they hadn't been in the land 50 years yet, and they was already exchanging things and bodies. So you have a lot of bodies moving back and forth. And what you're going to see later on in some of these books, that the lines get blurred. The lines get very blurred. And so I'm going to show you this, okay? Let's keep on going to this next page real quick. Okay. And it's got dominions immediately established it upon it a large Spanish colony. Now he's thinking about, he's looking out at the land and stuff, and he's thinking about, already how things are going to go down and how he wanted to be processed. It says, De Soto had contemplated peopling some beautiful country, and was better pleased with this section than any other, but his imagination still pointed to some gold region like Peru. He returned to the chief his profound thanks, adduced many reasons for declining the liberal offer, among others that Maldonado's ships would await him at the Bay of Pensacola. Yet, in the face of all his kindness, the polity and suspicious De Soto kept the chief about his person as a hostage to preserve peace among the Indians, to extort slaves and provision. So, what happened was, in one of the other pages, they go to the Chief Tuscaloosa, and they say, hey, we need to go somewhere and we need to discuss things. Okay? These Indians and these chiefs were not stupid. They knew what he was doing, but man, you're dealing with the beast here. You're dealing with the liar of liars. You're dealing with some murderous, ravenous people. And so they were, for lack of a better word, escorting them. But De Soto was using his presence as a buffer zone. And the Indians that was around there, like the people, they seen this, and they were saying, like, this chief, he's a free man. He's the chief of chiefs. But little bit by little bit, it started taking on the appearance of him being held hostage, man, and people wasn't feeling this. So let's go over to this next part. Okay, now that our ships working at the Bay of Pensacola, yet in the face of all his kindness and polity, the suspicious De Soto kept the chief about his person as a hostage to preserve peace among the Indians and to extort slaves and provisions. Enraged at the imprisonment of their chief, the Indians fled to the woods to prepare for war. 4 captains of their companies were dispatched in different directions in pursuit and returned with many women and men in chains. Some of the principal of these were released at the entreaty of the chief, while others were carried off upon the expedition, laden with arms and baggage, and those who were not destroyed at the battle of Mobile were conducted far beyond the Mississippi River. Okay, now I'm skipping around a little bit. I didn't want to start on point A and go to point B. I want to skip around and show you some things. So there was a war. They fought. The Spanish won. So it's just going to be a lot of back and forth. But okay, so he said, return with many women and men in chains. So these wars that they was going against and fighting, if you lost, they enslaved you. Right then, there on the spot. So this whole myth about Indians couldn't be slaves, that's out of there. That's out of there. So, okay, let's keep on going. Iron and baggage. The Indians returned from the forest and remained at peace with the Spaniards, but were dissatisfied at the restriction imposed on the liberty of their chief. After 25 days had been passed at the capital of Cosa, De Soto marched in the direction of Tallapoosa, leaving behind a Christian Negro too sick to travel, whom the Indians desired to retain among them on the account of his singular hair and sable complexion. He recovered and was doubtless the distant ancestor of the dark-colored savages seen in that region in more modern times. The first day the army passed through the large city of Talamusachasa. Within a few hours, it had been abandoned by its inhabitants. Now, back to this Christian dude, right? Some of the conquistadors was what you call black, if not most of them. These people are from Spain, and they was Christians. And in another book, it talks about this same event where it says De Soto didn't want to leave him, but the dude was too sick, and he was a good slave, and they didn't want to leave him there. But what ended up happening was this dude couldn't walk. So he was a good slave and a good Christian. But as I just read, let's read it again. He recovered and was doubtless the distant ancestor of the dark-colored savages seen in that region in more modern times. You gotta ask yourself, what does that mean? More than likely, this dude was a Moor, okay, from Spain, which goes back into this thinking or this train of thought that when you get into these books, these older books, when they always had a guide with them, it's always a black guide or Negro guide. You have to ask yourself, how do these Negro guides, supposedly from West Africa, A, talk to these people, B, know the land? The people that they were seeing, this dude was A, related to them, could be related to them, or B, they referred to him as an ancestor of these people they seen in modern times. Okay? So, and you're reading some of the other books talking about the same event, they cut off the distant ancestor and the dark-colored savages part. They just said they left the Christian there that couldn't walk, that was a slave, and he was a good Christian. So when you talk about these guides and stuff, these people are from here or there, but they spoke the same language and they were related people. Okay? So let's keep going. See, making sure everything lines up real good. Like I said, man, you can form your own opinion on this. What is that? What is that question? Like, what does that mean to you? You know what I mean? How do you take that? That's what I'm saying. How do you take that? Okay, so now I got on this other slide, the myth of no Indian slaves. Now we ain't even got to that slide yet. Now we already seen that it was slaves, Indian slaves, women moving back and forth. And the thing is this: 200 years later, when the other Europeans come through, like the French and the English in these regions, and they see these long-haired, light complected, they were still quote unquote blackish, but you see these light complected people. Where do you think they came from when these dudes was taking loads of females out of here, man? You know what these dudes was about. Now, I don't want to say it in this particular research right now. That's got to be a whole video to itself. Man, these dudes was devils, man. In every sense of the word, they were devils. And they needed drink, pork, and women. All right, so let's go to the next one. It said, the good news which established De Soto to make a wide circuit in the interior. He ordered Maldonado to put to sea in the brigantines, then lying in the Appalachia Bay, to sail for Havana and return from hence with fleet frightened with supplies to Aucas, where the expedition would join him in October. Learning from an Indian slave that a country to the northeast abounded in gold, De Soto set up in that direction on the 3rd of March, 1540. He entered the territory of Georgia at southwestern border, crossed the Ecumichi, the Ogmu, the Ogulgi, Okini, and the Ogeechee, and marched upon the banks of the Savannah. So now we went back a little bit. We went back in time to how the whole thing jumped off. Some Indians told him in another place, an Indian slave from another place told him that there was gold in another direction. So that's how, they came in looking for gold. So it says he entered the territory of Georgia at the southwestern border. And, he crossed over upon the banks of the Savannah. The Georgia Indians, whom no preceding exploring expedition had molested, treated the Spaniards with kindness and warm hospitality. And then there's another word, I'm not even going to attempt that, where the expedition had arrived, were seeing people richer, better dressed, and more amassable than upon the march. The Indians in Georgia and Florida at this early period lived in the same fashion homes upon the coast. They were built of wood, thatched with straw, and covered with palm leaves. Further into the interior, they were covered with reeds in the manner of tiles. And many of the towns achieve upon high artificial mounds generally erected in the bottomlands. The tops of these mounds contained from 10 to 20 houses occupied by the chief, his family, and attendants. Man, you see these cats was living real good, man. Real good. These are the places where a lot of y'all's ancestors is from. A lot of y'all forefathers were these people from these areas, and they want to make it seem like these people just a bunch of butt-naked savages. No, man, that's furthest from the truth. All that TP stuff need to stop, man. Okay. It says, in terms of high. So his spot was in the middle of all these other areas, and they had artificial mounds, right? So that's a big hill with some houses on it, and his was in the middle, overlooking all of it. Okay, they were steep and inaccessible all around, except on one side where steps were cut, flanked with poles driven close together and laid horizontally, forming a count of wooden stairway 15 feet wide, leading up to the houses. Below in the plain was usually a public square, around which lived the chief men, while the common people placed their wigwams as near the mound as possible. These towns presented a romantic and singular appearance, sustaining the royal family above the humbler dwellings of the masses. Their houses for winter were dug with clay, entered by a low and small door, while a hole in the roof let out the smoke. And that clay, some of that clay, you can make that clay hard. It's almost like concrete sometimes. And then you smooth it out. Others, for summer, set upon posts and were open at the sides. The barns in which they stored corn were made of wood with floor cane hurdles. All right, let's go to the next one. So I want to point that out because, man, it's like they tell you this whole TP stuff and the buffaloes and stuff. That was in the West, not in the South. You're talking about two different types of people here. I would say, okay, now let's go here. Okay, so it says the banks on the opposite side were other towns skirted with rich fields laden with heavy ears of maize. Beautiful river gliding its silvery waters through fertile lands and a delightful climate contributed to render the whole prospect most pleasing, but the reception of De Soto among these people was cool and scarcely civil. Some had abandoned their houses at his approach and gone into the woods. Okay, so a lot of these people, man, they seen these people coming, man, they got out of there. All right. Now, I could sit here and I can go through and compare this with the Bible all day, but just for the sake of just studying this, we're going to focus on this. However, the chief gave him 40 Indians. See, there we go. It's giving bodies. We're moving bodies around. After a few days, a noble-looking young savage of gigantic proportions with the face extremely handsome, interesting, visited the marquis. He was the son of Tuscaloosa, a potent chief whose domains commenced 30 miles below and extended to the great Tombakachi. Ooh, these words, man. Some of these words. Anyway, he bore an invitation from his father to De Soto to hasten his capital, where he was making preparations to receive him upon a magnificent scale, and that he then awaited him upon the eastern confines of his territory. The son was dispatched with a suitable reply and presents for the father. Having remained in Talisi 20 days, De Soto dismissed the chief of Coosa. Okay, and another thing I want to point out, man, is the Spanish were working with some of these chiefs and stuff. Some of these chiefs, because like you had factions, man. You had different chiefs who wasn't feeling certain ones, different tribes that wasn't feeling certain ones, and they'd work together, and they was plotting, okay, with whom he parted upon good terms, crossed Tallapoosa in canoes and upon rafts, marched down the eastern side and encamped the first night at Casista, probably the site of the modern Tose. Delayed in passing the river, he could not have advanced further that day. In the morning, hit the march resumed. During this day, a large town was discovered, and at night the camp was pitched upon the borders of another. The next day, advancing within 6 miles of the temporary residence of Tuscaloosa, a halt was made in the woods. Luis de Moscisco, the camp master, with 15 horsemen, was dispatched to inform the chief of the proximity of the governor. Moscoso found the proud Mobilian, the Mobilian is what they called them. It's Mobile, Alabama. The proud Mobilian, seated upon 2 cushions placed on large and elegant matting upon an eminence which commanded a delightful prospect. His numerous attendants posted themselves around him, leaving space for the nearer position of his chief men. One of these held over his head a round deerskin shield with a staff in the middle. So you see, man, these people had order. These people had ranking. It just wasn't some savage stuff. And this chief, Tuscaloosa, And this was the big cat, man. This was the chief of chiefs, the Amatat, the chief of chiefs. And so this goes before the Spanish capture him. But I'm just wanting you to see how things was moving, man. Okay. Now I want to read this part too. This, like I said, it could be the same page or it could be different pages. I'm skipping around to get to the points that I want to make. Painted with stripes and different colors, it was used as a banner in his wars, but as employed at present in protecting the head from the rays of the sun. Tuscaloosa was 40 years of age, great stature with immense limbs. He was spare around the waist, his whole form admirably proportioned. His countenance was handsome but grave and severe. He was the lord of many territories and much people. He was feared by his neighbors and subjects, which probably was why so many people was plotting on him. But in vain did Moscoso endeavor to incite his curiosity by prancing his horses before him. Sometimes he scarcely deigned to raise his eyes, and then again he bestowed upon the troopers the most contemptuous smiles. Even when De Soto arrived, he preserved the same haughty demeanor, but in consideration of his position as commander-in-chief, he reluctantly advanced and made the following address. Mighty chief, I bid you welcome. I greet you as I would my brother. It is needless to talk long. What I have to say can be said in few words. You shall know how willing I am to serve you. I am thankful for the things which you have sent me, chiefly because they were yours. I am now ready to comply with your desires. Okay, so this is what he was told, and the government replied in true Spanish style, failing not to assure the chief that even the distant Indian countries through which he passed had heard of the greatness and power. This interesting scene occurred below Line Creek in the present county of Montgomery. Both journalists agree that De Soto had advanced 36 miles below Tallahassee. Reposing at this town the space of 2 days, preparations were made in advance. An officer was sent among the horses to find one large enough to ascertain the giant Indian. A large pack horse, the property of the governor, was selected, apparelled in rich suit and scarlet, and cap of the same given to him by De Soto. The chieftain, who was a head taller than any of his attendants, mounted upon the horse, with his feet nearly trailing the ground. Onward, lofty and graceful, the Mobilian rode side by side with the governor, marching through the territory in now counties of Montgomery. All right. Okay, so after this, man, I don't want to hear no more about no TPs. I don't want to see shit else about no TPs, man. We are way past TPs. Now, we've seen how they said that the Indians in this region at the time, when this book was written, which was in the 1800s, was black people. They tried to say that the black Indians of their time, which was in the 1800s, was from that Negro Christian that got left there. And you got to backtrack the Negro Christian and the Indians, they got along. Now what is that saying? What is that meaning? That means that they were at least in the time somewhat similar. So you got to dodge the white supremacy hijack. They trying what they want to say. What they really implying is this: oh, the Indians now in the 1850s, the Indians now, they're black because of that dude, but they wasn't black back then. Now, how much sense does that make? Doesn't make any sense, does it? Okay, so we're gonna go here. Let's skip to this one. Governor's table, Calusa refused to return an address and added, he refused to return and added, if your chief knows what's best for him, he will immediately remove his troops out of my territory. In the meantime, Charamilla, one of the spies, informed the governor that he had discovered over 10,000 men in the houses that the subjects of Tuscaloosa and other neighboring chiefs, that the houses were filled with bow, arrows, stones, clubs, that the old women and children had been sent out of town. The Indians were at that moment debating the most suitable hour to capture the Spaniards. The general received this startling intelligence with deepest solicitude. He secretly sent word to his men to be ready for an attack. They're anxious to avert a rupture by regaining possession of the person of the chief. He approached him with smiles and kind words, but Tuscaloosa scornfully turned his back upon him and was soon lost among the host of excited warriors. At that moment, a principal Indian rushed out of the same house and loudly denounced the Spaniards as robbers, thieves, and assassins who should no longer impose their great chief by depriving him of liberty with which he was born and his fathers before him. Yeah, that liberty is gone at this point in time. The curse hit. His insolence and emotions, which made to shoot at a squad of Spaniards with a drawn bow, so increased Baltazar de Gallegos that which a powerful sweep of his sword, he split down his body and let out his bowels. Like bees in a swarm, the savages now poured out upon the Spaniards. De Soto placed himself at the head of his men and fought face to face with the enemy, retreating slowly, passing into the gate, into the plain. His cavalry had rushed in to rescue their horses tied outside the walls, some of which the Indians came upon in time to kill. Still receding to get out of reach of the enemy, De Soto at length paused a considerable distance upon the plain. The Mobilians seized the Indian slaves, packed upon their backs the effects of the expedition which had now arrived, and lay scattered about, drove the poor devils within the walls, knocked off their irons, placed bows in their hands, and arrayed them in battle against their former masters. In the first sally, De Soto had 5 men killed and many wounded. He among the latter number, having captured the victors, and it goes on. You see, all right? So they were trying to run this scheme. Each side was not feeling the other one. So this whole thing about, the Indians just welcomed them on in and with cool, calm, and collected, yeah, that's true to some extent, but they still didn't trust them. So when they got to a point where they feel like they could free their chief, what they did was they set a trap. They got the women and the children out of there, the old women anyway. They got them out of there, led them out of town. They set these houses and they waited for a signal. All right, and when this signal, they was going, it was on with the get down after that. But like I said, man, the Spanish was devils, man, like literal walking devils on earth. And when you see some of these dudes was full of arrows, and they was still killing people according to these accounts in some of these books. It was an account where one conquistador had arrows all in his back, and he was still killing Indians. Even some of their horses was demonic. Some of their horses was getting hacked up and getting shot full of arrows and stuff, and they still was able to ride. Like, I mean, some of this stuff, man, is pretty crazy, man. And they don't tell you this stuff in school. You know, I wonder why, because they figure, I guess, people was going to put two and two together, I guess. So we're going to go on here. Now, this is going to go into the battle, okay? It's going to go into the battle. It says, the heroic deeds of either side justly deserved. Often the Indians drove troops out of the town as often as they returned with increased desperation. Near the wall lay a large pool of delicious water, fed with many springs. It was now discolored with blood. Here, soldiers fell down to slake the intense thirst created by heat and wounds, and those who were able to rise again and once more pitched into a combat characterized by the most revolting destruction of human life. For some time, the young females had joined in the fight, and they now contended side by side with the foremost warriors. It was all out, all hands on deck situation, okay? It says, sharing in the indiscriminate slaughter, heated with excitement, smarting with his wounds, and provoked at the unsubdued fierceness of the natives, De Soto rushed out alone by the gates, threw himself in the saddle, and charged in the town, calling with a loud voice upon Our Lady and Santiago. He forced his charger over hundreds of fighting men and women, followed by the brave Nuno Tobar. While opening lanes through the savage ranks and sprinkling his tracks with blood, he rose on one occasion to cast his lance into a gigantic warrior. At that instant, a powerful winged arrow went deep into the bottom of his thigh. Unable to extract it or to sit in his saddle, he continued to fight to the end of the battle, standing in his stirrups. Everywhere that mighty son of Spain now gorged upon Alabama blood, his fierceness bounds filled the boldest soldiers with renewed courage. At length, the houses were set on fire, the wind blew the smoke and the flames in all directions, adding horror to the scene. The flames ascended in mighty volumes. The sun went down, hiding himself from awful sight. Mobila was in ruins and her inhabitants destroyed. As again I said, you can compare this with the Bible all day. The Battle of Mobila had lasted 9 hours. It was disastrous to De Soto. 82 Spaniards were slain or died a few days after the engagement. Along were Diego De Soto, nephew of the governor, Don Carlos Enriquez, who had married his niece, and Min Rodriguez, a cavalier of Portugal, who had served with distinction in Africa upon the Portuguese frontiers. Other men of rank and blood lost their lives in a terrible conflict. Okay? So, man, this thing was all out, man. It was crazy. Okay, now let's go to this next slide here, where I got the words, the Spanish needed African slaves. Okay, we've been talking about slaves throughout this whole thing. We've been reading about slaves throughout this whole thing. Okay, now let's go here. We skipped ahead some. It's after the battle, DeSoto died. Okay? When the place where DeSoto died, the Spaniards began the construction of 7 Byzantines when completed, the building of which required the change of slaves. This is why it was necessary for them to bring chain metal over here, because you can maim that chain metal, and you can make your handcuffs and your yokes and everything else. Go into the Book of Mormon. All right, it said chains of slaves, stirrups, saddle stirrups, and everything which had particle of iron made into nails by the erection of forges, the Indian mantles, sight held together for sails, the inner bark of trees made into ropes. Governor Moscoso departed down the vast stream in the 2nd of July, 1543. The once splendid army of 1,000 men were reduced to 320. 500 slaves were left at the place of embarkation, and Moscoso took with him 100, among others, the beautiful women of Mobila. Okay, there you go again. So, okay, let's keep going. 22 of the best horses embarked. The others were killed and dried food, and so were the hogs, a large number of which still remain. The Spanish were attacked and descending the river by fleets of Indian canoes. In one of these engagements, the brave Guzman and 11 others were drowned and 25 wounded. In 16 days, they reached the Gulf and put to sea the 18th of July, 1543, having landed at Tampa Bay the 30th of May, 1539. They consumed a little over 4 years wandering through Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and the vast regions of the Arkansas Territory, tossed by the waves, punished by hunger, parched by thirst, several times wicked, wrecked by tornadoes. The poor Spaniards finally reached the mouth of the river Panuco upon the Mexican coast, 10th of September, 1543. From thence they went to the town of Panuco, appareled in skins of deer, buffalo, bear, other animals, with faces haggard, blackened, shriveled, but faintly resembling human beings. They repaired to the church and offered up thanks to God for the preservation of their lives. Repairing to the city of Mexico, the viceroy extended them every hospitality. So did the elegant Castilian ladies of his court, who were enraptured with the beauty of the Mobilian females, the high-spirited daughters of Alabama. Maldonado, whom he left in Pensacola Bay, awaited the vain arrival of DeSoto. So you see a lot of bodies being moved, a lot of people being left, a lot of bodies being moved around, and they want to throw this whole Africa thing in there. Not once was that place mentioned. And all these slaves and all these women that they're taking out of these places, and took these people back to Spain, where it says, or in Mexico, the Castilian ladies of his court, who were enraptured with the beauty of the Mobilian females. All right. So you see, man, when the curse hit, it hit. When it was time for these people to fall, it was time for them to fall. These are a lot of y'all's ancestors. Everybody's talking about who wants to be Indian, the Indian this and the Indian that, and which one? Which kind of Indian are you? It's like, where are your people from? What are you talking about? We're just grouping everything together, and everybody has a special story. I'm not highlighting every single Native American tribe war with the colonizer. I'm not doing that. What I'm pointing out is simple things, because this stuck out to me because this is where my people from. And I'm gonna do one about the ones over there in Louisiana, specifically West Louisiana. But this right here, this is Alabama, Mississippi, and Georgia and Florida. And you can do a lot of other research about other stuff that was going on during this time period. The information is out, the seals are open, the books are open. These Spanish and these other Europeans rained havoc and death and destruction throughout these lands. These are your seals in the book of Revelation. As always, our praises to the Most High. Reverence and recognition of the Holy Spirit for the information that's coming out at this time. Admiration for Yahweh Shai, the Master Teacher. Till next time, peace.